Yes. So I'm gonna jump right in it. I'm gonna jump right in it. What would it look like if Jesus showed up everywhere we went? What would it look like if Jesus showed up everywhere we went? Not just here at church, but with you in school, at your home, around the dinner table, in the locker room. What would it look like? What if Jesus was right here, right now, living and moving with you every day of your life? How would that change things? Would you act different? Would you stop watching porn? Would you serve more on the other side of the tracks or in your church? Would you wait until you get married to have sex? Would your posture on Instagram be different? I'm going to repeat that last one again. Would your posture on Instagram be different? Pray with me. Dear Heavenly Father, thank you for this day. I know I'm not here by accident. I know it's someone in this room that really needs to hear this message. I pray that my words are your words. In Jesus' name, pray, amen. So, if you got your Bibles, I seen some of y'all with y'all Bibles up. I'm reading out of John, chapter 1, verse 14. I'm reading out of the Message version. So stay with me. The Word became flesh and blood and moved into the neighborhood. Everybody say neighborhood. Can y'all say that again? Can y'all say neighborhood? We saw the glory with our own eyes, the one-of-a-kind glory, like Father, like Son, generous inside and out, true from start to finish. Everybody say start to finish. So think about this. Jesus didn't stay distant or wait for people to come to him. Jesus didn't stay distant or wait for people to come to him. I run an organization called Hoops on Mission, and most people are like, man, I don't play basketball. And I'm like, so? You don't have to play basketball, but you could be a light. You could be present. You know, growing up, my mom had 3 or 4 jobs, and she worked like crazy, right? But one thing I realized about my mom, she always was a light. She never made excuses. But when I look at young people today, like all around Fort Myers, Cape Coral, Southwest Florida, I think about how people make excuses. We make excuses for everything. We make excuses in our homes. We make excuses why we don't working our basketball game. We make excuses. But think about if Jesus was in the neighborhood. What would change? What would change in this church, in this youth group? What would change in y'all? I think about the tax collector. Everybody know the tax collector, right? In the Bible, the tax collector, and everybody know he was stealing money and all that ooby-dooby jazz. But one thing I think about this, I think about how Jesus didn't run from him. He met him where he was at. I think about how we all know friends in the cafeteria or some people in this church too. I see how some people sometimes get real cliquey, and we get these little cliques, and you don't want to hang around nobody. But you think about the tax collector, how he moved, how he stole people money. But think about how Jesus pressed in that situation. Anybody here ever had to say sorry to anybody? So this is so crazy. I'm learning this. I'm married. I've been married 10 years. I got 3 beautiful kids, right? And one thing about sorry, my wife, I have to say sorry differently. I can't go to her and say, babe, like, I'm sorry. My wife wants to know why. What are you sorry about? What are you sorry about? And I'm like, hey, because you know when you're mad, you used to mumble it, right? You don't got no words, right? But one thing I realize is it's a humility that I got to have. It's a posture that I got to have too. But more importantly than all that, I think about my kids who are watching me, how I speak to my wife. One thing I realize is, as young people, we struggle at saying sorry. And when I say sorry, I realize, man, like, dang, like my wife told me this the other day, you are healing through your parenting, right? And I'm like, ugh, y'all ever got like a gut shot like in your chest? And I'm thinking about, man, like God, like me and my wife, we're on the same team, and apologies are important. So I'm always saying I'm sorry, but I'm always challenging young people to understand the art of saying I'm sorry and really, truly meaning it. Because we all make mistakes, right? We all make mistakes. To go back to that passage in John 1:14, he says, he moved into the neighborhood. He showed up where people were living their lives. Yesterday, I went to this community in Fort Myers, and I'm walking in this community, and these little kids run up to me. Man, hey, you're Dwayne Jackson. And I'm like, yeah, what's up, bro? And this little fifth grader say, man, like, where have you been? I'm like, what you talking about? Like, I've been around. Like, what you been? Where you been? He said, man, I thought you forgot about us. Right? And so often I think about myself. I got to humble myself because so often I want to be the hero in every story. And this young fifth grader was like, man, I haven't seen you around. And I asked him his name. He said, man, and I said, what's your name? The other kids were laughing. They was like, man, what's your name? They called me Hot Boy. I'm like, Hot Boy, what? But I realized this. I said, man, like, where your parents at? I'm just going home by myself. I'm like, what you, like, okay, like, where your parents? Like, oh, I'm home by myself right now. My parents at work, but I got to fend for myself, right? And I think about this, and I think about the neighborhood. I think about how Jesus showed up. I think about this passage, like, man, like, what if he moved into our neighborhood? And we all know neighborhoods have different identities. And we see that in Christmas too. So as a kid, when I was a kid, my mom, our highlight of Christmas, used to drive down McGregor Boulevard with the more affluent neighborhoods, and everybody have Christmas lights, right? And we know some neighborhoods have identity to it, right? So I'm driving down there, and we get out, and I'm looking at all these lights, and I'm marveling, me and my brothers, like we marveling over all these Christmas lights, right? And I think about my neighborhood, dark. And I think about, as Christians, and I think about this church and y'all in here, I think about we all come from different neighborhoods, but we one big family. But do we act like family? And everywhere I go, from the basketball court to different things, I look at the church, and I look at the identity of the church. And I'm like, man, if John Morant was here, he'll do this. You're too small. Because I think about the posture of different neighborhoods. Like, but God calls all of us to come together. And I think about, man, like I got a gym down the street, but like, man, over here in this community, some people will never come over here to this side. Why is that? Fear. Like, you mean to tell me, as Christians, we can't go on the other side of the bridge, vice versa, because of fear? But we all know, like, we go to church, like, God didn't give us a spirit of fear. Why are we so scary? So if Jesus was in this neighborhood, and your neighborhood had this identity, what do you do for your neighbors? Do you connect with your neighbors? Do you talk to your neighbors? What about at school? Do you pump fake with your neighbors? Because I think about this, and we all know when you think about this, you think about, man, like, we all know, like, man, like, what would it look like if we really was about that life? I got this kid like, Coach, you ain't about that life. I'm like, what? Well, you ain't about that Jesus life. And I'm like, I'm, I'm about that Jesus life. I hope so. I think I am. My first point of the day, if you're taking notes, it says, what it means to show up like Jesus. What would it mean to show up like Jesus? When we say we're following Jesus, it's not about knowing things or following rules. We all know that person who goes to church, but outside the church, they act different. Raise your hand if you know somebody like that. I know a lot of people like that. And we think about that. And we think about that person. And for me, I think about the church. I think about man, what are we going to be about, man? Are we going to play church? Are we just going to come to church, praise and worship, and then just leave and do nothing outside in the true mission field? When people think about Hoops on Mission, I tell them, I started this because 2 of my cousins were murdered. I was playing it safe, and I love teachers. I was a school teacher. I was playing it safe. I just got married, and 2 of my cousins got murdered. He was 17, started running back at Cypress Lake, and my other cousin was 34, drive-by shooting in Fort Myers on the other side of the bridge in Dunbar. And I felt like I needed to do something about it. You know why? Because it was personal. And as I look at the church and everybody in this youth group, I think about kids' faith. It's not personal anymore. It's Krispy Kreme. It's only good when the light come on. Why is that? Why don't we hold each other accountable? Some of y'all in relationships y'all know y'all shouldn't be in. But everybody knows, but nobody says nothing. What are we doing? Ja Morant. And this happens over and over and over and over and over again. And nobody says nothing. Why is that? Why is that? It's about showing up with the heart of Jesus, His kindness, His truth, His love, His swag. Everybody say swag. His drip. Everybody say drip. Everybody say drip. I just like to say that. Your drip. His posture in every place we go. So I got this picture of my mom. It's going to come up. Where my mom at? Where my mom at? Come on, mama. Hold on. It's coming. I got this picture of my mom. Where's she at? But it's going to come up in a minute. But my mom, when I think about my mom, right? I think about my mom, what she done for us as kids. Single mom, they make no excuses. Biological dad went to prison. She ain't make no excuses. Stepdad went to prison. She ain't make no excuses. I'm gonna get 3 or 4 jobs. But I think about my mom and how she cared for us. I think about how she lived her life on a day-to-day basis. And I think about us. How can we show up? How can we show up like Jesus? So, this big question. How can I show others what Jesus is like through my life? So, I run an organization called Hoops on Mission. I use basketball to tell people about Jesus. Real simple. I play basketball. Everybody know I'm a basketball player. I teach kids basketball, all this ooby-dooby jazz. But more importantly, I keep the main thing the main thing. And what happens is when you coaching and training kids, a lot of times you can see a lot of kids' identity is in basketball. It's not in Jesus, right? Their identity is in basketball, but it's not in Jesus. So me, I call them out. But what you realize is this, man, like every day, and I realize this for myself, like every day you have to die. You have to renew your mind every day. And I'm like, man, like, what do you mean? Matthew 10:22, it says, people will hate you for following me. What does that look like? I don't want nobody to hate me. I'm a people pleaser. Anybody a people pleaser in here? I'm a people pleaser. You mean people gonna hate me? And it might be hating on social media. It might be hating in your classroom. It might be hating because you're smarter than somebody else. But what is your identity? How can you stand firm in your identity? My second point, bringing Jesus into your everyday. When I think about John 1:14, it says, the word became flesh and blood and moved into the neighborhood. Flesh and blood and moved into the neighborhood. And why do we act different in school than we do in church? Why is that? Is it fear? Is it shame? So I'm learning how to swim, y'all. I'm black. Y'all know a lot of black people can't swim. Straight up. I'm straight up. So I'm 40. Let's be real. Let's be real. So I wasn't going to do it. I wasn't going to sign up. But I got an 8-year-old, 4-year-old, and a 2-year-old. And my wife was signing the 2-year-old up for swimming lessons. And she said, babe, I signed you up. Right? And I'm like, babe, are you kidding me? I'm not going. But when you get married, you understand this. I already paid. So I had to go, right? So boom. I'm at this lady in the backyard in Cape Coral, a little creepy neighborhood, right? She got a little thing over there, whatever, white old lady. But I love white people. So I'm over there, and this 6'3", 6'4" black dude in the pool, right? So my 2-year-old he crying like crazy. Then I jump in, thinking I'm cool, right? I got this. Like physically, I could do this. Like anybody like really competitive, feel like they can do anything. That's me. I'm that guy, right? So I jump in the pool, right? And this lady says this old lady, she said, we not doing it like that. I said, what you mean? What you ain't doing like that? You gotta do it like this. So I had to go through the process, right? I wanted to just swim, but she said, no, you gotta learn how to hold your breath. You gotta learn how to blow bubbles. You gotta learn how to, I'm like, what are we talking about here? So what happens when that happens? You get frustrated, right? I'm getting frustrated. I'm like, man, look at this old lady telling me what to do. What you talking about? But what I realized is this. Through that situation, God was allowing me to face my fears head on. What would it look like if we face our fears? Some of y'all got some issues with y'all mama or daddy, and y'all don't talk to them, and y'all act like y'all do, and when y'all go to church, y'all act like this in church, and then y'all act different. But your God is asking y'all to face y'all fears, to talk to y'all mom or dad. Some people in here they ain't never talked to their dad in a long time. But what I realize is this: physically, I can get through anything. Emotionally, spiritually, and mentally, my bench press is really weak. So what I realized is I had to die to self, pride. I had to humble myself. All this stuff I know. But when I was in that water, I had to trust this lady. And what I see with a lot of young people, y'all say y'all trust God, but y'all don't really trust God. Y'all don't really trust God. Y'all don't really live like that. Y'all really about that life. And what I see is like, man, like, what is the posture of the church these days? Do we just come here and just leave and do nothing at home? The word became flesh and blood. Anybody ever pray for patience? You ever pray for patience? I prayed for patience, right? And then things start happening, right? I'm like, oh my goodness, like, man, wait. But it wasn't patience that I wanted. It was control. It wasn't patience that I wanted. It was control. Like I would say I'm a good guy. Like I'm a really good guy. Like I feel like I'm a really good guy, right? But why do I want to control? Like that's my sinful nature. I want to control everybody because I'm a people pleaser. I don't want nobody to get hurt. So sometimes when I go to church and I stand there and I look to my right, left, this left, right, left, I'm going crazy, right, left, and I think about man, like God, like I surrender everything to you. But sometimes I go to church and I worry about what other people think about me. Why am I worrying about what other people think about me so much? Why is that? And I realize this. I need to spend more time with God. What would that look like if y'all really spend time with God? What it would look like if y'all start Bible studies in schools. People have so many excuses about public school, private school, whatever. Shut up. You are on a mission every day. And a lot of y'all are like this. But nobody says anything. But we can come here every Wednesday and say we really about that life. Are we really about that life? Are you fully sold out for Christ? Right across the bridge, there's been 22 kids, 23 now. Somebody got killed a couple weeks ago. 23 kids that have been murdered since I started Hoops on Mission in 10 years. Most of those kids are under the age of 18. And every day I'm like, God, like, why do you got me in this? But I realize, if not me, then who? We live in so much fear that fear paralyzes us, and we can't move. What are we going to be about? What are you going to be about? Y'all still with me? Y'all real quiet. I think y'all listening. When we start to live like Jesus, everybody say live like Jesus. Can y'all say it with some like energy? Say it again. Go. Dang. We at Cape Christian, yeah? Come on, man. It makes a real difference in how we act and who we are becoming. Let me repeat that again. When we start to live like Jesus is with us everywhere, it makes a real difference in how we act and who we are becoming. So my daughter, it's important who's she becoming. Hopefully I got a picture of her. Maybe not. Internet crash. But just check this out. I'm going to talk about it. So check this out. So my daughter, she's 8. She's amazing. But one thing about my daughter, she loves dance, right? Anybody here love dance? Dance? Okay, cool, whatever. One thing I learned about dance is dance teachers are brutal. Some of y'all have no idea. So I'm at the dance studio with my daughter, right? And I'm sitting over there. I'm sitting down, and I'm watching this dance teacher. I'm like, yes, more push-ups, burpees, pull-ups, right? And my daughter comes out after our first day at dance. She loves dance. And I'm like, babe, like, how was it? She's like, Daddy, it was hard. It was hard. But babe, like I always tell my kids, like, why do we dance? To glorify God. What does Daddy care about the most? My heart. Boom. Now we go to a real sport, basketball, right? So my daughter, come on, come on, come on, come on. I'm just kidding. My daughter, she a hooper. She a hooper. She 8. She can hoop. She can hoop. And what I realize is, in everything she does, she like her daddy. She don't like to lose. She's very competitive, right? Like, babe, like, why do you play basketball? To glorify God. What does daddy care about the most? My heart, right? And then I think about the posture of my daughter when she prays and worships, right? And I think about this happened the other day. I got a picture from chapel when she was in school, and I looked at the picture and I said, man, like, look at her praise and worshiping at 8, right? Sold out, all in. And I'm like, man, so she come home and she says, Daddy, I got to talk to you. And I'm like, what, baby girl? What? And she said, Daddy, like, when I was praising and worshiping, people were staring at me. And I was like, okay. She's like, nah, like, Daddy, like, I was the only one with my hands up. And I was like, okay. Why are you praising and worshiping? Praise and worship to glorify God, right? And I realized this, and this goes to my next point. Posture, last point. Posture is everything. Your posture. So, I'm going to read John 1:14. Y'all with me? Are y'all with me? The word became flesh and blood and moved into the neighborhood. Everybody say, moved into the neighborhood. We saw the glory with our own eyes, the one-of-a-kind glory, like Father, like Son, generous inside and out, true from start to finish. We saw the glory with our own eyes, the one-of-a-kind glory, like Father, like Son. So, Father and Son, it kind of hit home with me, because I got 2 boys, 4 and 2, Carmelo and Malachi. And Mello, he been here before, right? He been here before. He's a middle child. He go against the grain a lot, right? But I realized this, like, man, like, I rarely pray about parenting. I pray for my marriage, but I don't pray about parenting. So I started to pray about parenting. And God started to show me a lot of things, insecurities in me. And I'm like, dang, like, man, why is this so hard? And the easy thing to do is to bully Mello. Mello, sit down right now. But God is not that type of God. He wants me to disciple my 4-year-old. How do I walk him through hard things? Who are you walking with through hard things? It's easy to have a posture in here, but how is your posture outside of here? And with Mello, I think about Mello. Mello, like, and I read this book. I got to find it. I'll let y'all know what it was, the author. But, like, the book says, when it comes to boys, look at me, boys. Boys find their identity in performance. Boys find their identity in performance. And I know this to be true because I got kids now. And every time Mello does something, Daddy, look at me. Daddy, look at me, Daddy. And he's watching my posture. I could easily say, okay, look at you. He's like, no. Then he'll get louder. Daddy, look at me, Daddy. So he's watching my posture. And I think about when I first started Hoops on Mission. A lot of y'all don't know this. I had a 3-wheel bicycle when I first started. I ain't had no car. I ain't want to make no excuses. I was teaching basketball. I was a school teacher, and I had a 3-wheel bicycle. And one day, God led me into this neighborhood, low socioeconomic neighborhood, drugs, violence, all this. And dang, this is a long time ago. And God was like, go to this basketball court and pray. I'm like, man, I don't want to go over there and pray. Like, y'all ever felt that? Y'all ever felt like y'all need to do something, but you was like that fear, like was in you? But what I realized now, God was checking my posture. You really about that life? So I got my little 3-wheel bicycle, and I drove to this park. And I stand in the middle of this basketball court, and I'm looking around. I'm like, okay, God, like, I'm here. Like, what do you want me to do? Like, what do you want me to do? He said, pray. I'm like, okay, pray. He was like, nah, I want you to get on your knees and pray. I'm like, get on my knees and pray. And we all know it's easy to pray like this. It's hard to surrender everything to God. And I'm looking at y'all today. I'm thinking about, man, some of y'all got to surrender some things to God. And some of y'all got to change y'all posture. You going to have that Krispy Kreme theology? Or are we going to rock out with that Chick-fil-A Polynesian sauce? Because what we see in this world, the posture of the religious people, all in the Bible, the Pharisees, who are you becoming in this world today when we need young people to stand up and fight? Are you really going to be about that life? So I'm at this basketball court, and I'm on my knees, and I'm praying, like really on my knees, and I'm praying to God, like praying for the community, right? And there's drug dealers all around. We call them D-boys on the other side of the track. They got gold teeth from here to here, right? And I'm so embarrassed. But am I about that life? And I share that story with y'all because from that neighborhood, I was able to baptize 6 kids from that neighborhood. And I think y'all can clap it up. Come on. Yeah. But think about the genesis of my story. God was checking me, trying to see how my posture is, if I'm really going to be about that life. If I'm really going to be about that life. And I baptized those kids. They just graduated last year. But I think about the genesis of my story, where everything began to where I'm at right now. How Hoops on Missions is bringing kids from across the bridge to this side of the bridge and all over. And they're doing life together. And I got kids in the projects hanging out with kids in affluent communities and gated communities. I got kids from the projects hanging out with kids in gated communities. But it all started with my posture. Like, what are y'all going to be about, man? What are y'all going to be about? And I think about this. John 1:14. The Word became flesh and blood and moved into the neighborhood. We saw the glory. We saw the glory with our own eyes, the one-of-a-kind glory, like Father, like Son, generous and inside and out, true from start to finish. True from start to finish. And I think about my friend earlier this year. He was like, man, like Dwayne. I'm like, bro, like, what is something I need to, what I need to grow in? Like, bro, like, what do I need to grow in? He said, man, you need to be more generous. I'm like, what? I am generous. He said, no, you're not. So often, you live with your hands like this. Because we got bills. We got real bills. But God is calling you to open your hands up. And I think about so many young people. And we always think about money. But are you generous with your time? Are you living with your hands like this because you got so much anxiety to talk to your neighbor? Are you going to surrender everything to Christ and trust him in everything that you do? So, this week, what would it look like if Jesus showed up? Think about your actions. Think about your words. And one of my favorite verses, Matthew 5:14. Matthew 5:14. You are the light of the world. When we live like Jesus, people start to see his love, his generosity, and his truth through us. You are the light of the world. Are y'all a light? Raise your hand if you're a light. Put your hands down. So one thing I really love to do, and a lot of people know this, I like writing poetry. I'm a poetry nerd. I write all the time. I'm going to share a poem with y'all, and then I'm going to say a couple more words, and then the worship team going to get going. Cool? So check this out. So, a little breakdown of the poem. So, like my boy B said, I went to Mariner High School, but the crazy thing about that, I'm being really vulnerable right now, like, I grew up in the projects, but back then, and you can look up the word, some of y'all, educate some of y'all, they were gentrifying everything in Fort Myers. So gentrification, what happens is you live over here, but mostly the dominant majority live over here, and they bust us like an hour and 30 minutes over here, right? So what happens is I got to learn a different culture, right? So I became best friend with this kid that lived on Matt Lachey in high school, right? I'm 40 now, chill. He lived on Matt Lachey. And what I realized is, man, like, this the first time, like, I really doing life with, like, a white person. It's the first time I realized some white people don't put salt on their food. I realized they got a pantry, and I could take any snacks home, not always, y'all chill. I could take stuff home, and I could take it home to my brothers, and I could do all that. But what I realized, all that white, black, whatever, they showed me love. A little nappy-head black kid from the projects. They showed me love. They made no excuses. And when I think about what God was doing in my life, in the genesis of my story, and what I'm doing right now, it all made sense. I was in the valley, but God was shaping and molding me in the valley so I could be right here today. And so often we make excuses because this person live over here in this neighborhood, or this neighborhood, this person white, black, this person got a sailor's mouth. Who cares? With Christ we could do all things. So this poem is like a project baby. So it's called Project Baby. And what happened was teachers labeled me a project baby, but they didn't know my story. And sometimes we can look at people and we can label them because of our perceptions and all our experiences, but we don't really know that person. We don't really know that person. But sometimes we can go with the crowd instead of stepping in and doing life with that person. So, Project Baby, here we go. I was labeled a project, but aren't we all projects? I was labeled a gangster, but my family haven't ate yet. School lunch saved me from being hungry some days. Can you relate? I was growing up living paycheck to paycheck. I used to pray for better days. I used to have to eat cereal for dinner, which had my stomach a mess. It's no wonder I'm lactose intolerant, but there was no other options growing up in the projects. Summer so hot, but inside my heart so cold. Long days on the b-ball court, I had big dreams of making it to the pros. Suntanning on the b-ball court had me changing shades, but my mindset was set to do anything to get a smile on my mother's face. I'm a little darker now, but I made $50 betting on a one-on-one game. I was just 13 years old. I knew if I would have lost, I would have ended up on the front page. I was betting with no coins in my pocket from a drug dealer. I could have ended up in the grave. But that was our dinner money for that night. I had to feed a family of 6 for a few days. Smile on my mother's face, because we all know she was only making minimum wage. And me and B know all bets off when there's no food on the table. Cop gets behind me. As I pull in my mother's yard, cop jumps out. Mama opened the door. I ran into her arms. I was so scared for a few reasons. But you know, my mama came out that door and gave him a few words. Those dreads from a college graduate from a Christian college fit a description of a wanted suspect. I was spooked for a few days, man. I didn't even leave the house. Paralyzed and afraid, I'm thankful for my mama coming out that house. Becoming a sick and abused kid, for him or her to become healthy and crack a smile. I was punished by all my teachers growing up because of my IEPs never fitted the crowds. But living in the projects made me smarter, especially those days when I had to walk on water. Project baby. So, as we go into this week, John 1:4. Everybody say John 1:4. Everybody say neighborhood. Everybody say neighborhood. Let this verse inspire you in your neighborhood. Let us walk in boldness, y'all. God has called all of us to live on mission. Are you going to be about that life? Let's worship.